So, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update. We actually made it to episode 50. I'm your host, Alexa. I'm here with our VP of Sales and Marketing, Ken, our digital media specialist, Q, and we also have our national account manager, Santos. So, hello everyone. Welcome.
Hello, Alexa. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Santos, thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
Hey, mosey on over here.
Yeah, come on over
A
on a
whole
Friday
5
afternoon.
minutes.
Yeah, whole 5 minutes.
We missed you at lunch today.
You know, I can have pupusas and tacos.
You can make, your pupusas are
We can
probably
make-
better than the ones that we get
Yeah.
at the store.
We can make
so.
pupusa tacos if you
Yeah.
want.
That sounds
good.
really good.
It's pretty good.
Santos was like, I had pupusas for lunch. I have them like every
I'm-
Saturday.
I'm
Yeah.
fine.
So, all right, Alexa, did you want to do a little, let the folks know what we're here for today?
Yes, of course. Okay, so as you guys all know, or at least might have an idea, some of us came into the industry pretty new, not knowing anything about it whatsoever. And over the last 2 years, I feel like we've been exposed. We've been absorbing as much information as we can. So we're just here to give you a little update on everything that we've learned.
Yep, this was my kind of crazy idea for a 50th episode, right? All three of you came from outside the industry, outside of
Yeah.
coding and marketing, outside of consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, et cetera. And it's just really neat to, obviously, Quinton and Alexa, you guys have really taken a deep dive on the industry with the industry updates, 50 episodes, one every other week. That's basically almost 2 years worth
Yep.
of industry updates now, which is crazy to
Yep.
think about when we
Yeah.
first got started with that
I
with you
know.
guys, that it's been 2 years now. So I kind of wanted to have this. I thought it'd be cool that'll. Because we have a lot of these conversations, that folks aren't a part of around the office, when you guys see stuff like, oh, I'd never thought about this or thought about that, and then the way you look at the grocery store now compared to before. So I got some questions here to get our conversation going. I think the easiest way to get us started is kind of going around, if we all take turns. I guess, Alexa, if you want to start, kind of like, what was your background? Where did you come from? And then, like, what were you thinking, like, when you first took this job, and I made that call, I said, all right, Alexa, come on in if you dare. Come join this crazy crew. Like, what were you thinking, and what were your expectations? And again, like, tell everybody kind of what your background was before you came into the industry, I guess.
Okay, so background-wise, I was about like a year out of college. I had just come from copywriting for a credit repair and rent-owned home company, which is a completely different industry from what I'm currently in. Expectation-wise, I honestly didn't know what I was getting myself into. Didn't really know what traceability information was. The most I knew about this industry was maybe like expiration dates on products. So that
Right,
was
yeah.
about the most that I knew.
From very much like a customer, right,
Yeah.
purchaser buyer perspective,
Consumer.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, should I buy this or not? Let me get the milk in the back
Yeah.
Yeah.
of the. And what about you, Santos?
Came from oil and gas, being in Houston. I mean, pretty much 90% of my family's in oil and gas. So I had zero idea, besides, just like Alexa, besides just looking at date codes and barcodes and stuff like that. So it was completely new. It's funny. I thought whenever I even applied for SNEED, it was coding solutions. So I was like, hey, COVID just happened. I had one of those downturns in the industry, right? Oil and gas. So like I could switch careers and do computer coding. I'll learn it. I'm a fast learner, something like that. And completely to my surprise, it's not exactly what I
Yeah.
expected for it to be, right? So it was eye-opening, I would say. Great experiences so far, and having now know what it all takes, right?
Yeah.
I was a how it's made. I know Ken.
Yeah,
how it's
we
made.
talk a lot about that. Yeah.
I was a how it's made kid, so I mean, I had maybe some groundwork on it, but I had no idea how much manufacturing there was here for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with y'all. I came from the pharmaceutical world, the compounding, pharmaceutical world. But yeah, I mean, same thing with you. I thought that like this was like a coding place,
Yeah.
not a coding place.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, really my biggest interaction with date codes was seeing what my dad had stored in the back of his fridge. Like, it was like really for me, like what date codes were is like, let's see how old of stuff my dad has. And sometimes we go back to the 90s or okay.
Oh,
But yeah, but that was my whole thing, or that's how I thought of this, and my perspective has been changed completely because of what I've learned. So.
Right.
Absolutely, I'll give you much longer just to give everybody, like, it was my first job. This industry not at SNEED, but coming in this industry, we won't talk about how long ago that was also like Alexa, similar to her, pretty fresh out of college. And yeah, when I first applied at that company, who also sells inkjet coating equipment, was thinking like along similar lines. Either like, this is like desktop printers, office printers, like what's going on? So yeah, definitely. I remember my wife at the time actually thought it was a scam. She was like, "What? This doesn't sound like a real printers, coding." So, and then also I want to follow the comment that you made, Quinton. I get that a lot, or not Quinton. God, I did it again. Santos.
We look so much
Santos.
alike.
I
It
know.
happens all the time to us. Yeah.
About the coding, right? The software thing. So many people think that. I still to this day get that. I get it on LinkedIn. I get it from talking to people at my kids' swim meet. And you know, oh yeah, I see you're doing your coding solutions. So like, what kind of software you guys? Like, what do you guys
How
do?
many emails do you get trying to sell software, kid?
Well, it used to be more, but now these days it's just always people trying to sell me like biz dev solutions and stuff. So like, oh, you're not hitting your quotas. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, no, it's really neat. So, well, all right. I'm kind of the next question I have written down, but you know, now that we're in it, like, what are kind of like what's the right way to phrase my question? I was gonna, I have written down, how's reality been different from your expectation, but like, I guess kind of. Yeah, just kind of talk about what you feel like you've learned, or how you would explain. How about this? How do you explain to your friends or your family what we do or the industry we serve? What kind of goes into that?
Yeah, I mean, I just definitely say date codes, lot codes, and all that. And then, of course, we have our whole SNEED pack line, too. So I really like dropping case rectors and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's a good crowd, like, pleaser. I mean, honestly, it's been a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. Like, even beyond, like, I get paid to do this. But now it's, like, actually a pretty fascinating world. It's, like, seeing how it's regulated, or really how it's not regulated in some ways is super fascinating. But, yeah, I just feel like I was kind of shocked at like how big the world is too. Like it's like a massive, or like it's a massive industry that touches everything, and that blew me away.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same viewpoint too. I kind of whittled it down over the years, the 5 years that I've been here, to production line equipment and packaging equipment.
Yeah.
That's, conveyor belts, stuff like that. That kind of gets the wheels turning for them. But it's likewise. I mean, I didn't think of the gravity of how large the industry really truly is. I was kind of stuck in that same, I wouldn't say small sector of our economy, but in the oil and gas, kind of really closed-minded. You're kind of have blinders on.
Yeah, exactly.
So you really don't really look at other things, right?
And it's like I grew up with my dad being in, like in oil, like with oil, it's like if it's bad, it's bad,
It's
and
bad.
it's bad for mostly everybody. Here, it's like if something's bad, it's like I don't, like we have bird flu going on, like that should be or like that should be such a huge deal, which it is. But like we have so many other different sectors that we cater to. That's like bird flu certainly is something that is like we pay attention to, I guess. But like there's other stuff going on for us.
Recalls and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Like recalls are regular for us,
So a lot of the news segments that come on for me, especially pertaining to food, like Boar's Head, whenever all that stuff happened, it's like, this is wild. People don't seem to understand how important it is to have a lot code or date code, because there's no way you'd be able to find out.
If I pull all that product, pull it out of the supply chain.
Yeah, you pull everything out of Boar's Head was a huge situation, right? But I mean, it's...
Yeah, I still want my liver pate and my sausages back. Okay, so Boar's Head, if you can get your facilities cleaned up, I'd really appreciate it.
And see, I think adding on to what you guys said, in the beginning, I didn't think that this industry, I didn't think that you would necessarily see what we do everywhere, but I feel like we're so intertwined with everyone throughout the industry. Like, you don't just see it on food products. You see it on, like, building materials. You see it on, like, parts. Even at the gym, you see, like, QR codes everywhere. And that's something that we're, like, big on here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point, and that's kind of like it's a catch-all phrase, right? CPG, consumer packaged goods. If you really think about that phrase and you think about the world, it's literally everything.
Yeah.
We consume, everything we buy, everything we... So, and now that we've, expanded beyond our inkjet coating And then, like you guys are saying about the SNEED pack line, or case packers and case erectors and labeling machines, it's even a wider, with the coding, it was very, very, we were very much inside of food and beverage. Not to say we weren't inside of others like pharma and whatnot, but like that, when you get into packaging, then it even opens up even wider. You get into toys. We did the Funko Pop and stuff in here, and we were looking at different types of packaging. So it's really, like you guys said, it's everything we touch. What about like in terms of like the here's what like I find myself sometimes a lot having to like repeat and re-explain to what people have already explained to my friends and family. They still don't get it after like the third or fourth time. Like, the meme that you see, like what my friends think I do, what my how does that, like, you guys got any funny like little anecdote or anything from your family in terms of?
I have one. It's, when I first started, it was all printers and everything before all the packaging equipment. And all my brothers, I have tons of brothers. They were like, hey man, they'll call me, hey man, my daughter has a project due. She has to print a bunch of, stuff out. Do you think you can print it out for me? Start thinking, I'm like, do you not know what I do? It's not those kind of printers. You know that, right? Well, can you still print them out? I was like, I don't even have a printer. Everything's digital. Everything's on a PDF. And they still joke to this day. They call it Dunder Mifflin. Hey, Santos, you work for Dunder Mifflin. Ken's Michael Scott. I can see that.
I feel like whenever people really don't get it, like the folks that I meet for like the first time, that's my last ditch. Is like, do you know The Office, the show?
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Exactly.
It's like, so like that's whenever they truly just don't get it.
That's
I'm
what
just
our
like.
office does, yeah.
Like, I'm just like, okay, this will help.
Yeah.
I had a gentleman, this was years ago at a networking lunch, who asked me what I did, and I fumbled badly in explaining inkjet coding and inkjet, and then he just looked at me after I was done, and he said, you should never, ever tell anybody that that's what you do ever again.
Jesus.
Granted, that guy was not a nice guy, but
Yeah.
also a little note for myself, like, all right, I need to get better at coming up with, like,
Yeah.
so now it's just like, okay, do you buy milk, beer, ketchup? Like, those are always, like, my top three go-tos. Expiration dates on there, you know those? Okay, got it. All right. Here's a conveyor. Here's a printer. This is what we do, right?
Well, most people don't even. I mean, they don't even think how it even happened.
Exactly.
So it's not in their.
Like, you take it for granted, right? You take it for granted. We all do. And I think especially during the pandemic, we realized how much we took the supply chain for granted when you started running out of toilet paper and everything else, right? You take for granted that supply chain we have in this country, that how everything moves together in terms of, like, the raw ingredients, the manufacturing, the packaging, and then getting it out to distribution, and then getting it to retail, getting it to stores, and then getting it to our to our tables, to our fridges, and whatever else. But how has this in general, Alexa? I don't feel like we've been giving you a good enough chance, but like, how has this affected like you? Like when you go into a store, a retail store, how has it changed the way you look at products on the shelf, or like anything along those lines? Like, is there a different? Oh, sorry about that, Quinton. Has it changed your perspective at all, and if so, how?
Okay, so before I was still obviously looking at like expiration dates just because I didn't want to select anything that was already going to be way past its prime, I guess. But going into this industry, we obviously learned the difference between like your best by dates, your sell by dates, your use by dates. So like your best by is like peak quality. Your sell by is like when stores need to get that off of the shelf or they need to get rid of that product. And then your, sell by, best by, use by. Use by is when you actually have to use that product. Like, it's no longer just about, like, peak quality. It's also, like, it's on its last leg, essentially.
Yep.
So paying more attention to that, because I feel like people use it so interchangeably, and obviously they don't mean the same thing. So that's something that I now keep more, or pay more attention to, I guess, is the best way to put it.
No, I used to be the guy that looked at, for, like, milk. Right, that's the biggest example. If I saw the expiration date before, I'd throw it out. That was my first thought. I didn't even smell it or anything like that. I'm really bad at spoiled food and stuff like that, so I just throw it out.
My girlfriend's like that. Yeah.
So I mean now, look at the day. I was like, it's a couple days. I mean, it's still good. Doesn't smell like.
Yeah.
It smells good.
Give it a little smell test.
Yeah. Or we just turn it into cheese after that. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's a good one too. Like right with the date codes, like I love sharing that with family and friends. Is like when they start to realize that, like, there's no actual there's no real science or regulation or any kind of. We did an episode on that. I'm sure you guys remember last year, and Like the date coding, but all of that stuff. It's more for the supply chain and more for the keeping rotating stock FIFO than it is actually about consumer safety, which is wild when you think about it. Because so many people think that there's that Best Buy date, like you were saying,
I was
that is like, oh, they say it has to be used by this. It must be used by this date.
Well, especially on like stuff like meat products, like I would be like, this has to be for real. And now like I'll go look at the bargain bin and I'll kind of look at it and be like, it's fine, it's okay, Where my wife, and
we'll just cook it well done tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also like, I mean, to speak to the sniff test, like my wife can't smell. Born without doesn't smell, so like.
Oh really?
So like now like I get into this thing with her where like I'll be like, don't throw it away.
Yeah.
The date code is fine, and she'll be like, if the date is past that, I'm throwing it away. She's like, I can't do the sniff test, so I'm out. And so I'll be like, dang it, like come on now, we're good, we're good. But so like that's
No, you're absolutely right, and that's I laughed though because I remember growing up I used to think my mom was crazy. I still kind of do, but she used to always say like, hers was always like, as I recall, like around like Tylenol and like medicine and stuff like that you get that has a Best Buy. She'd always be like, I remember clearly her one time telling me like, because it was like some aspirin or something I was taking. I was like, oh, it's past the due date or whatever, and she was like, no, they just put that on there. It's a scam. They're just trying to get you to buy more. Oh, okay. And then I was just like, oh yeah, my mom's crazy. And then I got into this industry and I started learning about the supply chain and sell-by dates. And I was like, oh, you know what? There might be a little something to my mom's conspiracy theory about this from years and years ago. So,
or I think another one that I didn't pay too much attention to before jumping into this industry was like recall information or recall notices.
Yeah.
So before I was just like, oh, like could that really affect me? Like that's not actually gonna affect me. And now that we're in this industry and that it happens so often, it's just like, okay, maybe I should pay a little more attention and like maybe I should check lot codes, batch codes.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind.
Since we dove into like all the SNEED-CAST stuff too, you walking in a grocery store, some of the boxes or some of the packaging that people use, I think are like, how do they even put these into production? How do they, trying to figure out how do they actually do it?
Yeah.
What machines they're using, stuff like that. So that's kind of eye-opening on that part of it too, right?
Speaking to that, like I become like a packaging or like a packaging design nerd in some ways now, where I'll just like kind of go through the grocery store and be like, this is impressive.
Yeah,
I'm
really cool
I'm
stuff.
really impressed by this end cap right now.
Absolutely.
It's like they someone cooked with this end cap, and I'm really impressed right now. So like that's where it's embarrassing too, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, regarding like the industry update, you guys do typically about 4 to 6 stories, I think, every other week. I know, Alexa, you do a great job every once in a while. I'll send one if I see one that I think would be a good one to share. But of all the, let's say 45 stories times 50, you're looking 200 plus, maybe 250 stories that you guys have covered in the last 2 years. Do you guys, I see, of course, Alexa's already got her notes written down over here. Teacher's pet, guys. What was maybe some favorite stories that you guys have covered? I know, goddamn, I called you Quinton again.
We look so much alike. Hey, buddy.
Santos, I know you tune into the industry update too when they drop, so maybe you have a favorite story as well or something that kind of sticks out. But Alexa, if you want to start, if you have like a favorite, or maybe not necessarily a favorite, but like a mind blowing, like whoa, this was a surprise.
Okay, so it's mind blowing how easy it is to scam the government, and I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat that. There have been so many industry updates where
It's all scam.
You're feeding right into Doge, right?
Yeah.
Don't want to get political, but
okay, but no. Realistically, and Q can like attest to this. There are so many scams that go on, and going back to episode 7, we had the Kingston brothers who stole $511 million with a fake biodiesel scheme.
I remember them.
Yeah.
That one was
they,
crazy.
They did not try to hide it whatsoever. So
They
that was one.
They also looked like people who would scam the government.
Yeah. No, you guys have to go back and like check out the graphic on that one. Episode 7.
All right,
Yeah.
definitely check that one out.
That's bold, man. That's
Oh
funny.
no, 100%, and they weren't being like shy about it either. Like they were flaunting it.
Yeah.
Going to episode 33, banning lab-grown meat. I know that like sparked a whole debate here as to whether we would eat it or not. Me personally, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm gonna fall firmly. I'll probably try it because I do have a weird morbid curiosity, but it wouldn't be something that I'd add into my diet.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's we're getting a little bit too far on some of that stuff. That's where it's getting crazy.
How much sawdust is in that stuff?
Yeah, seriously.
I know.
And then last one, just episode 39, that was Boar's Head Listeria outbreak. So that was the start of it, and we had a couple of updates on that. But it's interesting to see. It's interesting and like concerning to see that that's still a problem nowadays. Just because I know that we had linked it back to St. Clair's. What was it? The jungle? Not the jungle. Am I
No.
thinking of it?
Yeah, Upton Sinclair's the
Yeah.
jungle. That's
Okay,
exactly
okay,
where I was
okay.
going to.
Yeah. So going back to that, like, I understand back then, just because like regulations weren't in place and maybe like safety
Yeah.
and cleanliness wasn't that much of a priority, but for it to be like a concern nowadays is
With the Boar's Head thing, the one that really kind of irked me was just if you go into the details of it, how far back their violations go, and how often the USDA and I think it was just the USDA. I can't remember which regulatory body it was. Had cited them repeatedly over and over again.
Just wild.
And
Yeah.
and they're just like a complete blatant disregard, and then just keep operating, and then there's nothing being done. Yeah, like you said, it that one for me, and like even going back a few years ago to Bluebells, that was almost a
yeah,
decade
yeah.
ago now. But like you see some of these, and it's just like in this day and age, that this is still happening is absolutely
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
I swear, for me, like those regular, the FDA, whoever goes in and does those testing, that was my favorite one, by the way, the Boar's Head one. I actually found out a lot more information from watching those, but it reminds me of, I'm not sure if you guys are old enough, but here in Houston, Marvin Zindler.
Slime in the ice machine.
I think about that every single time there's a recall, huge, like
Yeah.
the Listeria one or the Bluebell one and all that. That's the first thing I think of.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like for me, it happened this year, but we covered the Kroger and Albertsons merge that got shut down by the
Yeah.
FTC, and like going through that was super fascinating. Like seeing the way the grocery store industry is segmented and seeing how big of a deal that was going to be. I mean, it was a billion dollar deal, but also like they were about to take a huge market share, and it was fascinating seeing it. And like that was one where we covered it several times. Like we were covering it throughout. So like seeing the evolution of that fully was really, really fun. And then like there's been enough stories now to where like we have covered it like maybe like a month before, and then I'll see some like fairly decently sized productions following it, and I'm like, oh, I know everything about this story because I like
Yeah,
like
research.
yeah, like I know
Absolutely.
about this story. And so like it's like that's been a really fun thing is like seeing all these like news stories that, and it's not like it's just one time we saw it. It's like it happened like every month probably, whereas like, and once again, we're not saying people are watching us like that, but
Yeah,
it's,
right,
it's just
right.
like it's like what you're following is super fascinating to me. So yeah.
Well, on that point that you make, we like you said, it happens more often than you think. Like whether it's us, and it's not like we're out there. I think people, it's obvious, and you guys do a good job of crediting it. Like we're not doing any investigating. You know, it's not like we're just merely doing a recap of stories that we find in the trade publications and throughout what we think is some interesting or vital information. Gosh darn it! And then I just literally lost my train of thought. The stories that we cover or that you guys cover, and then like you see like some of them they hit, like you said, they hit the mainstream media like a week or two later.
Yeah.
But what's kind of sad about that is that some of these stories are pretty big and impactful stories, and I don't want to try not to get on a soapbox here, but then you see the amount of time that the major news sites waste on just irrelevant stuff that is just geared at getting people going and getting people riled up. It's like, you know what? I think that, child labor in the manufacturing plants and some of this other stuff that's going on might be a little bit more kind of stuff that we should be talking about.
Yeah, no, for
but,
sure.
Well, and to speak to that, I did not think that child labor was something that happened. And then at the second we started the show, it became very clear that no, that's something that happens all the time. Like once again, I don't think there's been a month where we've been reporting where we've been doing this show where there hasn't been some sort of child labor thing. So much so to where you're kind of like, hey, like
Lay off of it a little bit.
well, not lay off of it, but like it was like, hey, make sure you're covering the full thing on this
Right.
because
Right.
it looked like we were just like trying to find all these stories and all.
Well,
that.
there was a point where we were running a little bit too many negative stories. I remember having one like, let's try to not be like too like let's
Bring it
mix
up a
in some
little
little
bit,
like
yeah.
positivity
Brighten
too.
it up.
I think what I thought was here recently, it was like towards the end of last year, you guys covered quite a few stories, a handful of stories along the same theme, I guess, which is like massive food thefts.
Yes.
Like the first one that I recall was like summer, maybe September-ish or whatever it was. Like it was here in Houston, where they had a warehouse that had all that extra virgin olive oil, right? I
Yes,
think
yeah.
it was a high-end extra virgin, and if I recall correctly, it was something like 18 truckloads of this
That's a lot.
this
That's a lot of oil.
How do you steal 18 semi trucks of olive oil out of a warehouse? Is what I want to know. Like, and then there was one. I think it was tequila.
Yeah, there was
a
tequila.
one. There was so much for a minute there that I was like, man, I feel like we should have a special segment about like food criminals or like
Those-
supply chain criminals.
I mean,
or
Those
something.
throw me off, and the counterfeit ones
Oh,
throw
yeah.
me off too. It's like you're making counterfeit olive oil. Like,
I know. Yeah.
is it that deep?
You're making-
I guess
Making
it
fake
is.
Heinz ketchup.
Yeah.
Like, like,
That, yeah.
No, and then recently with eggs becoming like a hot commodity, there was like what $40,000 worth of eggs
Yeah.
stolen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, that was a big
another
one,
Yeah.
well, now you go to Costco now. They put a limit on the amount of eggs you can
You
buy.
can buy,
and
yeah.
all
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah, the egg thing is pretty. And then you think about like eggs. I think most people just kind of like think, oh, okay, eggs. It's like, oh, I just won't eat eggs for breakfast, or I won't have like cut eggs out of my diet. But it's like it's such an integral part of the
Yeah.
entire supply chain. When you think about all the foods you buy, everything else, all the factories and everything else, they're buying eggs too, and they're buying a lot of eggs. And so that's when those raw ingredients prices go up, then the finished product price goes up
Well,
too. So
And like doing this too, and we don't want to get too super political, but like during we just went through the whole election cycle where like grocery store prices were like a big deal, and doing this to me I had friends who would be like, well, eggs are high, so we got to vote for someone else, and I was like, well, there's also like a huge bird flu
Yeah,
destroying
yeah.
every single
Yeah,
chicken
having a-
coop, so it's like to me it did kind of enlighten me on that, where it's like it's not something crazy, it's just the fact that
yeah, dig
You know,
deeper
It's just
around
yeah,
that.
something's going around.
yeah, causation,
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so to me that's really helped me be more balanced in my head of oh, maybe there's something else going on
Yeah.
here.
Good stuff. Well, I think from the industry update, the one other thing we did want to cover too is just to shine a little light on you, Santos, our PMMI on the rise winner 2024. Woo! Wah, 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 wah.
Put the sound
Sorry. Quentin's got his headphones on. He's
Comes in next week.
But not just tooting your horn, Santos. Obviously, we're proud of you. But you were just recently at the. You now are a member of one of the PMMI advisory boards, the Emerging Leaders Committee, I believe is what it's called. And you were just at their meeting, so I thought it would also be apropos to give you the floor to talk a little bit about what that meeting was and kind of some of the stuff that you learned from the organization. And
Yeah,
might
it
be
was,
interesting for our audience to hear.
It was a pretty much a PMMI. It's an organization for consumer packaged goods primarily. Tons of members. I think they're up to about 1,000 members, companies here in the States. The meeting that I attended last week or 2 weeks ago now was for all the committees.
Yep.
Dealing with your
Like trade shows.
trade
Like one thing I
shows
should
and
point,
all
like
that,
PMMI, if that acronym, I shouldn't just assume that everybody knows what PMMI means. Pack Expo is probably the most recognizable thing that everybody knows is the big packaging trade show that happens every year.
Mm-hmm.
PMMI, that's their trade show, and then they do a lot around that. But yeah, like you were
So
saying.
they do a lot of that, and a lot of things that I found that I really enjoyed hearing from all these different people was, I mean, they really encouraged. They were really outspoken about the industry, I should say.
Passionate.
They were really passionate about it. It wasn't a hey, you go up there, can do your spiel. It was hey, we want feedback right now. What do you guys think about this? Throughout all the committees, right? We then broke down and actually met with all the committees and got to network and talk to your C-suite guys, to your regular engineer, sales engineer, or something like that. But it was really cool rubbing elbows with those guys and getting a different viewpoint from their perspective of their segment of the industry.
Right. Because you have OEMs, everything from packaging machinery like we do to robotics, automation, just all the things that go inside of a factory are the different types of vendors and members of the PMMI organization.
Came across competitors, and
Yep.
it's more so, there's enough business for everyone,
Yep.
right? So it's never, we're bumping heads or anything like that, or I'm not going to talk to you because you work for another company. It was more, hey, what are you guys seeing out there? Hey, have you come across something like this before? It was a really, really cool experience for networking and absorbing a lot more information from people that have been in the industry for, some guy's been in there for 45, 50 years, one guy was talking about.
Did what was the overall sentiment? That's the kind of one thing I've had on my mind in terms of people you talk to for for this upcoming year, the beginning of the year, turn of the new administration coming in. Regardless of how you feel about that administration, it's going to impact all of us, whether we're for or against. So what was kind of the general mood in terms of was there a lot of positivity, negativity, overall sentiments about the industry? And maybe, I guess, kind of the economy as a whole. Did any of that kind of get broached?
Yeah, it did. There was a little bit of uncertainty. I think just like all of us here, right? I think the tariffs was a huge topic that we spoke about, and bringing in everything here into the States, and how much that going to drive the economy, right? Or which way are we going to lean after the fact when it does settles, essentially, right? Dealing with Mexico and Canada and having all that political issues and stuff. It was truly kind of, to me at least, a little concerning. That other people within our industry kind of think that way, but at the same time, you really don't know what's going to happen. At a drop of a dime, it's going to change. Yeah. So you can't put too much onto that.
Cool.
It's true.
I'm trying to think. I don't have much of anything. This has been a really fun conversation, y'all. Anybody have anything else they want to throw in before we?
I'll just say shout out to foodmanufacturing.com and packworld.com. Those are the two sources that we pull from a lot.
Packaging Digest.
Oh,
Packaging Digest. The writers there are all awesome. They cover these stories so well. We try to give the credit we can, the best we can. But yeah, I like all the stuff that they have written about is super fascinating. So yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, teaser. We did just find out today that, speaking of Packaging Digest, that the managing editor or executive editor, Lisa McTeague Pierce, has agreed to come join us on the podcast in the near future.
Really cool.
We might be talking about some EPR stuff, and she's got a wealth of knowledge across the industry, so I'm hopeful that we can get her on regularly. So, you want to sign us out, Alexa?
Of course. So thank you guys for joining us on this special episode. Again, wouldn't be here without you guys. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell down below to stay up to date with all of our great updates. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye.
Welcome back to another episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update. Our series that keeps you updated with our ever-changing industry. For those of you that have been watching this series for a while now, you know how this goes. But for those of you that are new, welcome. We'll be covering the latest in manufacturing, packaging, coding, sustainability, and much more. I'm your host, Alexa, and today we'll explore a range of pressing topics, including the Trump administration's renewed push to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, and its proposal to eliminate junk food from the SNAP program. Additionally, we'll examine the potential economic impact of mass deportations on the U.S. economy and the consequences of shutting down the USAID for both domestic and international organizations and individuals. So, starting it off. In 2018, the Trump administration initiated a bold trade measure by imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. The primary justification for this action was to protect national security and revitalize the domestic steel and aluminum industries, which the administration argued had been severely undermined by years of foreign competition. At the core of the decision was Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which allows the president to impose tariffs on imports deemed a threat to national security. The tariffs included a 25% duty on imported steel and a 10% duty on imported aluminum, affecting key trade partners such as Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. The rollout of these tariffs marked a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, aiming to prioritize domestic production over global trade dynamics. President Donald Trump emphasized the importance of bringing jobs back to America, asserting that the tariffs would reverse the decline of the steel and aluminum industries. "We're going to bring back our jobs," Trump remarked during a White House press announcement. He further stated, "Our steel industry is the bedrock of America. It's how we build our ships and planes." According to the administration data, U.S. steel and aluminum factory output had dropped by 15% between 2000 and 2017, underscoring the rationale for this policy shift. Despite the administration's ambition, the tariffs face significant backlash both domestically and internationally. Critics warned that the measure could spark retaliatory actions, increase costs for U.S. manufacturers, and strain relationships with critical allies. For instance, the European Union imposed counter tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, bourbon, and motorcycles in response, escalating trade tensions. Meanwhile, domestic manufacturers such as automakers relying on imported materials reported rising operational costs. To address these challenges, the administration established a process for companies to apply for exemptions, allowing some importers to avoid the tariffs if they could demonstrate an insufficient domestic supply of the materials they required. The effects of the tariffs have been mixed. On one hand, domestic steel production saw a temporary uptick with some mills reopening and blue-collar jobs being added. The U.S. Commerce Department reported a 6% increase in steel production in 2018 compared to the previous year. However, industries dependent on steel and aluminum imports, including construction and automotive sectors, grappled with increased costs, which were often passed down to consumers. Moving on, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, a critical safety net for millions of Americans, is at the center of a controversial proposal from the Trump administration. SNAP provides essential food assistance to approximately 42 million people across the United States, helping low-income individuals and families access basic nutrition. The proposed policy seeks to restrict the purchase of junk food with SNAP benefits, aiming to promote healthier diets and reduce rising public health concerns tied to poor nutrition, such as obesity and diabetes. Under the proposed plan, certain foods categorized as junk food, including sugary drinks, candy, and processed snacks, would no longer be eligible for purchase with SNAP funds. Notably, reports from the USDA show that approximately 10% of SNAP benefits are spent on sugary beverages, a statistic cited by proponents of the policy as evidence of its necessity. Sonny Perdue, the agricultural secretary at the time, stated, "This is about maintaining the integrity of the program while encouraging recipients to make smarter, healthier dietary choices." While this is not the first time restrictions on SNAP purchases have been proposed, this initiative represents an intensified focus on aligning federal nutrition programs with public health goals. Despite good intentions, the plan has drawn significant criticism from advocacy groups and food policy experts. One major challenge is the difficulty of defining junk food. Critics argue that categorizing products could create administrative inefficiencies and confusion for retailers and program participants. For example, there are over 300,000 food and beverage items sold in the U.S., making a comprehensive list of banned products nearly impossible to manage. Another concern lies in the stigmatization that may result from such a policy. Stacey Dean of the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities highlighted, "Restricting choices implies that low-income families cannot make responsible decisions, which is both unfair and inaccurate." Some opponents also contend that limiting food options without improving access to fresh, affordable produce or nutrition education may not lead to healthier diets. Potential solutions have been proposed to address these challenges. For instance, some policymakers suggest complementing restrictions with incentives, such as expanding the SNAP Healthy Incentives Program, known as SNAP-HIP, which provides additional benefits for purchasing fruits and vegetables. Increasing funding for outreach and nutrition education programs could also empower individuals to make healthier choices without further government restrictions. If implemented, this policy could lead to significant shifts in how SNAP benefits are utilized. Proponents argue that restricting purchases of unhealthy foods could reduce the prevalence of diet-related illness over time. However, critics suggest that immediate effect might disproportionately burden low-income families who may already face barriers to accessing healthier alternatives due to food deserts or higher costs. The proposal also risks placing further strain on stores and administrators tasked with navigating the complexities of product bans. Ultimately, while the Trump administration's proposal sparks a necessary conversation about improving public health and program efficiency, it underscores the need for a balanced, evidence-based approach. Policymakers must carefully weigh the trade-offs to ensure that SNAP continues to serve its primary mission of alleviating hunger while addressing nutritional concerns in an equitable manner. Moving on, the United States economy heavily relies on the labor and contributions of immigrant populations, both documented and undocumented. According to the article, How Deporting Millions of Immigrants Would Shock the U.S. Economy, the removal of millions of undocumented immigrants would lead to widespread economic disruption. These individuals play critical roles in various industries such as agricultural, construction, and service sectors. The debate over immigration reform has long been a contentious issue, with deportation policies raising concerns about their broader financial and societal consequences. One major finding detailed in the article is the integral role undocumented immigrants play in sustaining industries that rely on a workforce willing to take on physically demanding or low-wage jobs. It is estimated that undocumented immigrants contribute approximately $4.7 trillion to the nation's GDP. Policies aimed at mass deportation are projected to reduce the GDP by nearly $1.6 trillion over 20 years, a significant downturn that highlights their economic importance. Additionally, experts emphasize that a reduced labor force could exacerbate existing labor shortages in critical sectors. Deportation policies not only risk economic strain, but also present logistical challenges. For instance, enacting the mass deportation of 11 million immigrants would require unprecedented funding and resources. Cecilia Munoz, a former director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, stated, "The cost of such an endeavor is mind-boggling. It's not just economically expensive, it's also damaging to communities and businesses." To address these challenges, policymakers could consider comprehensive immigration reform as a solution. Implementing pathways to citizenship or legal work programs would help integrate immigrants into the economy more formally while preserving their contributions. The economic shock of widespread deportations could reverberate across communities, affecting both local and national economies. An estimated loss of nearly 6% of the workforce would lead to severe slowdowns in industries such as agriculture and hospitality, potentially resulting in increased prices for goods and services. The ripple effect would impact not only business owners but also consumers. Furthermore, the disruption of families and communities would have long-term social consequences that extend beyond economic metrics. Ultimately, policies that prioritize inclusion and reform over mass deportation have a better chance of fostering stability and growth. And we've made it to our final story. The recent shutdown of the USAID has significantly impacted numerous individuals and organizations, both domestically and globally. USAID, a prominent government agency responsible for international development and humanitarian aid, plays a vital role in supporting nonprofit workers, farmers, and countless communities in need. Over 1,200 U.S. government-funded projects have been halted due to the shutdown, disrupting critical efforts that many rely on for economic stability and essential resources. With the shutdown, several critical programs have come to a standstill. Funding for agricultural initiatives aimed at supporting rural farmers have been frozen, leaving them without the necessary resources to sustain their livelihoods. Farmers dependent on USAID-funded programs have reported projected losses potentially exceeding $500 million. Additionally, nonprofit workers who manage international projects have faced furloughs, with approximately 70% of USAID's workforce affected. This includes 2,000 nonprofit workers and contractors across the U.S. now grappling with significant financial uncertainty. The cessation of operations has delayed not only ongoing projects, but also the launch of new initiatives aimed at fostering economic development and resilience. Approximately 117 countries have reported widespread disruptions to aid programs, further highlighting the global ripple effect of the shutdown. The most pressing challenge highlighted is the disruption of income for farmers and communities relying on USAID supporting programs. One farmer remarked, "Without the funding, I cannot afford to buy seeds for next season. It's a chain reaction that affects my entire family." Nonprofits, meanwhile, are grappling with uncertainty over long-term funding as they attempt to pivot to alternative solutions. Advocacy groups emphasize the need for immediate action from policymakers to restore USAID's operation, proposing interim funding measures to alleviate the sudden pause. Experts warn that a delay of even a few weeks could take months or years to restore full functionality to many affected initiatives. The consequences of the shutdown extend beyond economic losses. Rural communities that depend on the USAID support are witnessing increased financial instability, and halted projects could lead to setbacks in years of development work. Nonprofit workers, some of whom spoke anonymously, expressed fears about the undermining of trust overseas as U.S. programs fail to fulfill their promises during this downtime. The ongoing situation underscores the critical need for stable operational frameworks to ensure international aid and development programs can function without interruption, safeguarding livelihoods and global cooperation efforts. This episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update is proudly sponsored by the SNEED-JET Titan half-inch inline printer. Designed for versatile performance, the Titan excels at marking on a variety of surfaces, including porous, semi-porous, and non-porous materials. From glass, plastic, and metal to cardboard, wood, and paper, this printer handles it all with ease. Whether you need to print personalized messages, barcodes, logos, lot codes, badge codes, or other variable information, the Titan delivers precision and reliability. Understanding that every production process is unique, the Titan offers flexibility in ink options. Choose from a range of colors: white, black, red, yellow, blue, green, and UV. Whatever your marking needs, the Titan is built to adapt and perform. Like always, stay tuned for our next episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell down below to stay up to date with all of our great content, and let us know what topics you'd like to see us talk about here on the show. We look forward to hearing from you all. Bye, everyone.